Breaking news rolling in this morning, January 4, 2026. Moscow airports shut amid Ukraine drone attacks. We're seeing reports of air defenses active right across the capital region, with flight restrictions imposed at multiple major transport hubs. The front line for Russia is, well, it's no longer hundreds of kilometers away, it's closing in. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Ari in the latest deep dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover how air warfare, driven by drones and long-range missiles, has, well, it's completely redefined the meaning of war depth.
It really has. Our mission today is, I think, a crucial one. We are charting this incredibly rapid and, frankly, brutal escalation. Air warfare has gone from being a localized conflict to a war of industrial capacity, fought across thousands of kilometers. So we've looked at sources detailing two simultaneous and pretty terrifying realities. First, the overwhelming scale and volume of Russia's massive barrages on Ukraine, and second, Ukraine's increasing effectiveness using these deep strike capabilities to hit critical Russian infrastructure military production sites far, far behind the traditional battlefield.
This isn't just about tactical gains on a map anymore. This is a new kind of economic and industrial attrition. And I think to really understand the magnitude of this, we have to start with the raw data.
Absolutely. To hit you with the immediate cliffhanger, the numbers are they're astronomical. Russian strikes on Ukraine reached an almost unbelievable high point. We're talking over 823 projectiles launched on a single Sunday back in September 2025.
823 in one day.
In one day. That single tally is a grim new benchmark for high-volume warfare.
And on the other side of that coin, when you look at Ukraine's ability to turn the tables and strike deep into Russia,
the pressure is just undeniable. Just look at the operational effect. Earlier in 2025, major deep strikes caused so much chaos that Moscow's key airports reported over 2,000 canceled or delayed flights.
2,000 in a single weekend.
In one weekend. That level of disruption used to require fighter jets, conventional bombs, Now it's being done with drones. The war is now fundamentally an industrial and economic air contest.
Okay, let's unpack this shift in strategy. I want to start with that overwhelming volume coming from the Russian side. It's easy to throw numbers around, but you have to pause and realize the sheer constant pressure this implies. The Center for Strategic and International Studies reported Russia has launched at least 37,000 air attacks on Ukraine just since the start of 2025.
37,000 strikes. And that figure isn't random. It really speaks to a deliberate strategy. They're trying to do two things. First, saturate and overwhelm Ukraine's formidable air defenses. And second, force Ukraine to just exhaust its finite and very expensive interceptor stockpiles.
And what's fascinating is the trigger for this escalation. You're talking about the timing, right? Around the talks.
Exactly. We saw drone strikes averaging, about 120 per day between January and May 2025. That's already a brutal pace. But immediately after those bilateral talks in Istanbul failed in May, the pace just accelerated sharply.
Right.
That average jumped to 185 drone strikes per day from May to August. So when diplomacy failed, the immediate response was to just intensify the aerial bombardment.
And that campaign culminated in that record setter. Tell us more about that single attack, the 823 projectiles on September 9th. What was the goal of deploying 810 drones and decoys alongside 13 heavy missiles all at once?
This wasn't just shelling. It was a demonstration of intent, of capacity. It was pure saturation. Now, this massive wave, it killed at least 4 people, wounded 44, but strategically, it damaged a key protected government building in Kyiv. And this was the first strike on that specific site since February 2022.
So they were making a point.
A huge point. It illustrates their evolving goal to ensure that even amidst hardened, previously untouchable targets are now vulnerable when you're faced with overwhelming mass. They want to show that nowhere is safe.
So the core question then becomes, how does Russia sustain this? It boils down to the economics, to the drone itself. The tool of choice here is the Shahed-type drone, but now they're producing them domestically as gerunds.
And that shift to domestic production is absolutely crucial. It's a move toward industrial self-sufficiency, right? It reduces reliance on foreign supply lines, and it lets them scale production much faster. These Juran 1 and Juran 2 drones are incredibly low cost, reportedly between $20,000 and $50,000 apiece. But the larger one, the Juran 2, has a striking range of at least 2,000 kilometers. It's a blunt economic sledgehammer.
And the production figures, that's what really underlines the strategic commitment here. Ukrainian intelligence suggested back in June 25 that Russia could produce around 170 of these per day,
That's over 5,000 a month.
with a target of pushing that to 190 per day by the end of 2025. This is an industrial campaign.
It is, and that industrial capacity is constantly being fed, which brings up a critical point about sanctions evasion. We recently found an Indian-made electronic component, an Aura semiconductor, inside a Jiran 2 drone's antenna.
Right.
And this single tiny chip reveals the whole global complexity of sanctions circumvention. Russia isn't importing massive systems anymore. They're sourcing these common, low-cost components that are just harder to track and ban. They're building their war machine one microchip at a time.
Okay, so if the Gerans are the offensive backbone, you mentioned the Gerberas, the tactical deception. Tell us more about this decoy system. How does that turn the economic tables on Ukraine?
The Gerbera is a brilliant piece of deceptive warfare. They are low-cost shells, empty or with very little payload, but they are engineered to mimic the exact radar signature of a live armed Shahed.
So the defenders have to make this split-second choice.
An impossible choice under fire. Is this an inexpensive decoy, or is it a weapon targeting critical infrastructure? If they choose wrong, they waste an incredibly expensive interceptor missile, often $1 million or more, on a decoy that costs maybe a few $1,000s.
It's a direct attack on Ukraine's defense budget.
Exactly. Beyond that, you also have the highly effective Lancet kamikaze drones for precision strikes and the Zaleh family for reconnaissance. But in terms of sheer volume and strategic pressure, the Garand remains the primary weapon.
Given this unprecedented volume, Ukraine's defense is under immense pressure. So what counter-tactics are proving most effective, and how are they balancing cost and effectiveness?
Ukraine has had to create a highly sophisticated, layered air defense strategy. It means combining the highest-end Western systems with low-cost, decentralized solutions. You can think of the German IRIS-T and U.S. NASAMS as the high-altitude shields protecting critical cities. They're essential, but they're finite.
And then you have the systems that bridge the gap for those low-altitude threats, the ones that try to sneak in under the radar.
Precisely. Asharad systems, mobile fire teams with man-pads and heavy machine guns. Those are essential for taking out the low, slow-flying drones. The goal is to shoot down a $30,000 drone with a $3,000 machine gun round, not a $2 million missile.
And the sources show certain tools have been absolute standouts in that cost efficiency, like the German Gepard anti-air gun.
The Gepard has been absolutely crucial. Its radar is fast, its 35mm ammo is cheap, it's perfectly suited for carving up those slow-moving Gerans. And on top of that, Ukraine's own domestic innovation is just accelerating. We're seeing cutting-edge R&D put immediately into the field.
You mean things like the laser systems?
Yes. Take the Ukrainian laser system named Trisub, or Trident. This system is already being used operationally. There's footage of it destroying a fiber-optic FPV drone. This is a pivotal development because lasers, unlike expensive missiles, offer almost limitless shots at a near zero cost per kill. We've also seen the APKWS-fired Vampire missile system successfully intercepting a Russian drone. These domestic innovations, coupled with Western tech, are the key.
Okay, so the narrative so far has been Ukraine's defense. But the war's second terrifying development is Ukraine's ability to turn the tables, to show that distance no longer means security for Russia. Let's flip the focus. The breaking news we opened with about the Moscow airport shutdowns is just the latest proof of this strategic reach.
That January 4th event is a clear illustration. Russia claimed to have downed 123 Ukrainian drones, with 11 aimed at Moscow. But the intent is clear: disrupt the political and economic center of Russian power. And this has been building all year. Go back to July 2025. Major drone attacks caused massive chaos at Sheremetyevo, Pulkovo, and Nizhny Novgorod airports. We're talking 485 cancellations, 1,900 delays in 2 days.
That kind of sustained air traffic disruption must have a huge economic hangover. It's not just a military inconvenience, is it?
Oh, far from it. This is economic warfare. Analysts estimated those disruptions could cost the airlines nationwide up to 20 billion rubles per day. Ukraine isn't just seeking military targets, it's applying real financial pressure.
And strategically, the targets seem focused on defense industry infrastructure deep inside Russia. We've seen strikes on places like the Elma Technopark in Zelenograd, a leading center for Russian electronics.
Hitting microelectronic centers is crucial. It directly cripples their ability to produce their own precision munitions. It's a long-term strategy of industrial degradation. We also saw attacks on the Kronstadt drone plant in Dubna, the Promsyntez explosives factory. It's all highly targeted, aimed directly at halting the material flow that sustains the Russian invasion.
And we can't ignore the persistent targeting of Russia's energy infrastructure, that whole oil and gas campaign.
That campaign has been relentless. It hits the Russian war economy from two directions. First, it reduces domestic fuel for their military. Second, and maybe more critically, it cripples their export revenue. The Ryazan oil refinery, for example, was repeatedly struck in January 2025. Reuters reported the plant had to cease operations entirely. It's calculated pressure on Russia's cash reserves.
What's also revealing is the continuing systemic failure of Russian frontline security. We know that safety risks forced 11 airports in southern Russia to suspend flights way back in February 2022.
And critically, as of November 2025, 8 of those airports, including hubs in Belgorod, Bryansk, and Kursk, they remained closed. That means years of economic inactivity in regions close to the front. The fact they remain closed shows a clear, sustained failure by the Russian state to secure its own airspace.
So what does this all mean when we connect this entire technological and economic race? What are the key takeaways on this new normal?
I think the dual strategic challenges are stark. On one hand, Ukraine has to defend itself against these massive, cost-effective Russian drone waves, the Gerans, the Gerezas, forcing them into a perpetual expensive defense. On the other hand, Ukraine has demonstrated a profound growing ability to apply military and economic pressure deep inside Russia. This really highlights the vital need for continued robust support for Ukraine's layered air defense, while also supporting their capacity for these deep strikes.
And we must always circle back to the human cost. While we noted that Ukrainian drone attacks have sadly resulted in casualties in border regions, like the man killed and the 4-year-old child injured in Belgorod, the contrast in the overall scale is undeniable.
Absolutely. The UN reported nearly 14,000 Ukrainian civilians killed since the 2022 invasion. The sheer scale of indiscriminate attacks on Ukraine's population is the ultimate driving force behind all of this.
So given this current state of drone warfare, where both sides are scaling up production and targeting distant infrastructure, what is the realistic ceiling for escalation? And crucially, can traditional air defense systems truly cope with this volume of low-cost, disposable weapons long-term? Or does this demand an entirely new, maybe laser-focused approach to defense strategy? Something for you to mull over. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.